My name is Eleanor Voss. I was 29 when I learned that the people who raised you are not always the people who love you. The restaurant had low amber lights and the smell of rosemary bread, and I remember thinking, right before it happened, that this was the first birthday in 3 years my whole family had agreed to share. My brother Sam had flown in from Denver. My mother had actually called ahead to request the corner table, the quiet one, which from her was practically a declaration of affection. I should have known something was wrong when she asked the waiter for 2 bottles of wine before anyone had ordered food. I want to be fair to her. Even now, my mother, Diane, is not a monster. She is a woman who confuses control with love, and who has spent so many years being the one who holds the family together that she has forgotten how to simply sit inside a room without trying to rearrange it. I used to find that exhausting. That night, I found it something closer to frightening. I have an announcement, she said, halfway through the appetizers, tapping her fork against her glass like we were at a wedding. Before the cake. I want to do this while we're all here. Sam looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us knew what was coming, and that in itself tells you something about how our family operates. We are people who love each other and still manage to keep secrets the size of buildings. I spoke to a lawyer, my mother said. About the apartment. The apartment. My apartment. The 1-bedroom on Foster Street that I had bought 2 years earlier with a down payment I'd saved for 6 years, waitressing through grad school, skipping vacations, eating rice and beans so many nights that I still can't stand the smell of cumin. The apartment that had, admittedly, been purchased with the help of a loan co-signed by my mother because my credit history was thin and hers was not. A loan I had paid every month on time for 24 months with bank statements to prove it. What about the apartment? I asked. Legally, she said, and she said it so gently, so reasonably, that for a moment I almost missed what she was doing. My name is on the deed too. And given everything I've done for this family, given everything I gave up, I think it's fair that the property reflect that. I want to be added as a full co-owner. Not just the loan, the deed. There is a particular kind of silence that happens when a restaurant continues around you, forks against plates, someone laughing 2 tables over, while your own life quietly rearranges itself. I sat inside that silence for what felt like a very long time. You want to own half my apartment, I said. On my birthday. I want what's fair, she said. You wouldn't have that apartment without me. I want to tell you, I said something powerful in that moment. Some perfect, cutting sentence that ended the conversation and made her see herself clearly. I didn't. I sat there holding a fork I wasn't using, feeling 29 years old and about 6 at the same time, in the same body. It was Sam who excused himself. Said he needed the restroom. He was gone longer than a restroom trip should take, 12 minutes, maybe 14, and when he came back his face had lost all its color, like something underneath his skin had simply stopped working. He sat down. He didn't touch his water. He leaned toward me and said, so quietly that our mother, 3 feet away and mid-sentence about family loyalty, didn't hear a word of it. Eleanor, you need to see this. He put his phone on the table, face down, his hand still resting on top of it like he wasn't sure he wanted to let it go. We didn't look at the phone in the restaurant. That was Sam's instinct, and it was the right one. Not because he was protecting our mother, but because he was protecting me from having to arrange my face in front of her while my whole understanding of the last 2 years rearranged itself. We left before the cake. I don't remember what excuse we gave. I remember my mother's face, genuinely confused, genuinely wounded, as if she had proposed something entirely reasonable and we were the ones behaving strangely. In the car, in the parking garage, under a flickering fluorescent light that made everything look like a memory before it had even finished happening, Sam turned his phone over and handed it to me. I went to find the restroom, he said. And her purse was open on the bench outside it. Her phone was just sitting there unlocked, and I swear, I wasn't trying to look. I was going to hand it back to her. But there was a text thread open. From a lawyer. And I saw your name. The messages were from a man named Whitfield, at a firm downtown. They went back 4 months. Ms. Voss, reviewing the co-signer agreement you sent. Since you're on the original loan documents, but not the deed, your legal standing is limited. If your daughter refuses to add you voluntarily, your options are narrower than you'd like. I'd recommend the approach we discussed. Raise it in a setting where she's unlikely to say no in front of others. Family gatherings tend to work well for this. People don't like conflict in public. I read it twice. Then a third time because some part of me was still hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something kinder. There was more. A message from 3 weeks ago. Also, has she mentioned refinancing? If she refinances solo and removes you from the loan entirely, you lose your only leverage. I'd move on the deed requests sooner rather than later. Leverage. My mother had used the word leverage about my home. I want to describe what that feels like because I think people who haven't lived it imagine it as anger, pure and simple, something hot and immediate. It wasn't that, not at first. At first it was almost clinical, a strange, floating calm, like watching a diagnosis appear on a screen and understanding before you feel anything at all, that your life has just been divided into before and after. She planned it, I said. The dinner. My birthday. She planned all of it. Sam didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His silence was its own kind of confirmation, the particular silence of someone who loves two people and has just learned that one of them was using the other's love as a door to walk through. "What do you want to do?" he finally asked. I looked at the phone in my hands, at the calm, procedural language of a woman who had learned to speak about her daughter's home the way you'd speak about a contested parking space. And I felt something settle in me that I can only describe, looking back, as the birth of patience. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Something colder and more useful than either. "I want to know everything," I said, "before I decide anything." I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, my table in my apartment, the one my mother had called ours, over dessert I never ate, and I pulled every document I had. The original loan agreement. The deed, still solely in my name. Thank God. Thank whatever administrative slowness had kept her plan from having already succeeded. 24 months of mortgage statements, each one paid from my account, on time, in full. Sam stayed over. He sat across from me sorting bank statements into piles while I called our family's oldest friend, a woman named Renata, who had known my mother since they were both 22 and broke and figuring out how to be adults in the same apartment complex. I didn't call her to gossip. I called her because Renata was the only person who had ever, gently, warned me. She did this before, Renata told me, her voice careful, like she was choosing each word from a shelf of things she'd hoped never to need. "Not with you. With your Aunt Priya, years ago, before you were born. There was a house. Diane helped with the down payment, and then, when the marriage there was struggling, she tried to get her name added to the deed too. Said it was fairness. Priya fought her on it, and they didn't speak for 6 years. Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because your mother is very good," Renata said, "at making the story about her sacrifice, and very bad at letting anyone finish the sentence about what she did after." I hung up and sat with that for a long time. There is a specific grief in learning your life is not the first instance of something, that you are, in fact, a repetition, a pattern someone else could have warned you about if warnings like that ever traveled the way they should. By morning I had a folder. Bank statements. The loan agreement showing my mother as co-signer only, not co-owner. A payment history with her name on exactly 0 transactions. And, printed and dated, a photograph Sam had taken, with his hand shaking, he told me later, of that text thread on the bench outside the restaurant bathroom, showing the lawyer's name and the words "raise it in a setting where she's unlikely to say no." I didn't want revenge in the way people mean when they use that word. I didn't want to hurt my mother. I wanted, very specifically, for her to no longer be able to pretend that what she had done was fairness. I wanted the truth to exist somewhere outside my own head, solid enough that she couldn't talk her way around it. So, I made an appointment. Not with a lawyer, not yet. With her. "Lunch," I texted. "Just us. Saturday." She responded almost instantly. "I'd love that, sweetheart." A heart emoji. As if 2 days earlier, she hadn't been counting on my silence in a crowded restaurant to sign away half my home. We met at a small cafe near her apartment, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu, chosen because it was quiet enough for a real conversation and public enough that neither of us would raise our voice. She looked well, rested even. As though the days since my birthday had passed for her without the particular weight they'd carried for me. Proof, if I needed it, of how differently we'd each experienced that dinner. "I want to apologize for how I brought it up," she said, before I'd even ordered coffee. "The timing wasn't ideal. I got excited. I should have waited. The timing wasn't ideal. Not I was wrong. Not I shouldn't have. Just poor timing. Like she'd served the wrong course before the main. I had promised myself, on the drive over, that I would let her talk first. That I would listen for exactly how far she would go without knowing what I already knew. It was, I understand now, a kind of test, not of her love, which I no longer trusted, but of her honesty, which I still, foolishly, half hoped might survive contact with the truth. "Tell me why you think you deserve to be on the deed," I said. She talked for almost 10 minutes. About the loan. About the years she'd spent as a single mother, the sacrifices, the things she'd gone without so Sam and I could have things she never had. All of it, I want to be clear, was at least partly true. My mother had sacrificed. My mother had struggled. That truth and the other truth, that she had hired a lawyer to plan an ambush at my birthday dinner, were not in conflict. People are rarely simple enough to be only one thing. "I helped you get that apartment," she said near the end, "because I believed we were a family that shared things. I didn't think I'd have to ask twice." "You didn't ask once," I said. "You hired someone." I watched her face for the exact moment the color left it. The same movement I'd seen on Sam's face in the restaurant, except this time it was recognition, not shock. She knew in that instant that I knew. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice had lost its rehearsed warmth. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't need to, not yet. I had decided, in the days since the restaurant, that I did not want our first real conversation about this to be a trial. I wanted it to be a door, one last one, that I would leave open long enough to see whether she'd walk through it honestly. "Mom," I said, "I know about Whitfield. I know about the text where he told you to raise it somewhere I wouldn't say no in front of people. I know about Aunt Priya's house, 20 years ago. I've known for 4 days. And I've spent every one of those days deciding what kind of daughter I want to be about it." The cafe noise continued around us. Someone ordering a latte, the hiss of the espresso machine, while my mother sat across from me in a silence that had nothing performative left in it. "I'm not going to scream at you," I said. "I'm not going to cut you off tonight, out of spite, in the middle of a coffee shop. But I need you to understand something. That apartment is mine. It will stay mine. And the next time you try to take something from me by counting on my silence, you should know that I am no longer the kind of person who stays silent." She didn't cry, which surprised me. My mother, in my memory, cried at commercials, at other people's weddings, at the ends of movies she'd seen a dozen times. She did not cry at the cafe. She sat very still, the way people do when they are recalculating, and said finally, "I didn't think you'd find out." It is a strange thing to hear your mother admit not to wrongdoing, but to a miscalculation. As though the crime, in her accounting, was not the plan itself, but its discovery. "That's the part that scares me most," I told her. "Not what you tried to do. That you thought you could." We didn't resolve anything that day. I want to be honest about that because I think stories like this one are often told as though a single confrontation clears the air completely, and in my experience grief and betrayal are slower than that, more like weather than like weather report. I went home. I didn't hear from her for 11 days. In that silence, I did the practical things. I met with a real lawyer, a woman named Preeti who specialized in family property disputes and who told me, plainly, that because the deed had only ever carried my name, my mother's legal position was almost non-existent. The loan co-signature gave her financial obligation, not ownership. "She was betting on your discomfort," Preeti told me. "Not on the law." I refinanced within a month, in my name alone, removing her from the loan entirely. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. I also talked to Sam, more than I think we'd talked in years. There is a particular closeness that forms between siblings who have just watched the same parent become smaller and more human at the same time, and neither of us wasted it. We talked about Aunt Priya, whom neither of us had spoken to in years, and about the strange inheritance of patterns. How you can grow up inside a story without knowing you're inside it, until someone hands you the missing pages. I called Priya. It took me 3 tries to say the first sentence. I think I understand now, I told her. Why you stopped talking to Mom? There was a long pause on the line, the particular pause of someone who has waited a long time to be believed. I always hoped one of you would call, she said. I just didn't want to be the one who told you first. My mother called on the 12th day. I almost didn't answer. I did in the end because some part of me, the part that is still and maybe always will be 6 years old at that restaurant table, wanted to hear what she'd decided to become. I went back to Whitfield's office, she said, without preamble. I told him not to pursue it. I want you to know that. Why? Because Priya called me, she said, and her voice cracked, finally, in a way it hadn't at the cafe. She told me what she told you, that you understood now. I didn't know she'd kept it that long. I didn't know either of you would ever, she stopped. Started again. I don't have a good excuse, Sel. I told myself for years that what I did with her house was different. That I was protecting the family, keeping things fair. I told myself the same thing about your apartment. I think I've been telling myself that story so long I stopped noticing it was the same story, just with new furniture. I didn't rush to comfort her. I let the silence sit there, because I had learned, in the weeks since my birthday, that comfort offered too quickly is its own kind of dishonesty. I'm not going to pretend the last month didn't happen, I said. I'm not going to pretend I trust you the way I did before. That's not punishment, Mom. That's just what's true now. I understand, she said. And then, quieter. Can I still come to Sam's Thanksgiving? Or is that? That's not mine to decide alone, I said. But you can start by telling Sam what you told me. Not the short version. All of it. I did not sue my mother. I did not post about her online, did not tell the extended family in some dramatic reveal designed to make her small in front of an audience. I thought about it, in the angrier days. Thought about how satisfying it might feel to let everyone see exactly what she'd tried to do. But satisfaction like that has a short half-life, and I didn't want to build the rest of my relationship with her, however small it ended up being, on the foundation of a public humiliation I'd engineered myself. That would have made me a different kind of architect of the same kind of house. What I kept, instead, was clarity. The deed, solely in my name, framed now, not literally, though I joked with Sam that I should, as the one document in my life that no one could quietly rearrange while I wasn't looking. The relationship with Priya, tentative but real, rebuilt out of 20 years of silence neither of us had chosen. A different kind of closeness with Sam, built on the fact that when it mattered, he had put a phone on a restaurant table and trusted me enough to tell me the truth even when it cost him his own comfortable version of our family. And a new, harder kind of relationship with my mother, smaller than it used to be, more honest than it used to be, built on the understanding that love, in our family, would no longer be allowed to disguise itself as ownership. She came to Thanksgiving. She told Sam everything, the way I'd asked, sitting at his kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a coffee mug like she needed something to hold on to. He didn't forgive her easily, and I didn't expect him to. But he listened, and at the end he said the same thing I had said in the cafe, weeks earlier, as though some part of our family had finally learned to speak in a single, unified sentence. You don't get to plan around our silence anymore. I still live on Foster Street. The light comes in low and gold in the evenings, the way it did the year I bought the place, back when I thought the hardest part of owning something was simply affording it. I know now that isn't true. The hardest part of owning something, a home, a life, a version of yourself you can live inside honestly, is defending it from the people who believe love entitles them to a share of it without asking. Sometimes, in the quiet after work, I think about that night at the restaurant. The amber light, the fork against the glass, my mother's voice so reasonable it almost worked. I think about Sam's face when he came back from the bathroom, pale, holding a truth he didn't want to be holding. You need to see this, he said, and he was right, though it took me months to understand that what I needed to see wasn't only the text messages. What I needed to see was myself, the shape of the woman I would become once I stopped mistaking silence for peace and started understanding it, instead, as a debt someone else had been counting on me never to collect. My mother and I speak now, carefully, The way you speak to someone you love, but no longer hand your whole trust to without asking questions first. It isn't the relationship I grew up believing we'd have. It's smaller, plainer, more honest. Some days I grieve the version of her I thought I knew. Most days, I'm simply grateful I found out who she actually was while I still had a home left to protect. The deed is still in my name. It always will be. Some doors, once you understand what's on the other side of them, you learn to keep closed on your own terms, not out of anger, but out of the quiet, hard-won knowledge of exactly what you're allowed to keep. Some inheritances aren't houses or money. They're the silence we're taught to keep. Eleanor's story isn't really about an apartment. It's about the moment a daughter stops mistaking quiet for peace and starts asking what that silence has been costing her all along. If this story moved you, hit subscribe for more real, emotionally driven family stories every week. Drop a comment below. Would you have confronted your mother at the table or waited like Eleanor did? And if someone in your life has ever tried to count on your silence, share this video with them. They might need to see it too.